Welcome in to another episode of the Casual GM Podcast. I am your host, Drew, and joined as always, oh my God, Kevin Douglas. Joined as always by my co-host, Mike. Mike, how are you?
Just as handsome as ever, Drew. Welcome, Kevin. Joining.
Kevin was
Awesome.
on the ball.
He was.
So first off, what we'd like to say is that our thoughts are with Damar Hamlin and his family for the injury that he suffered on Monday Night Football, and we wish him speedy recovery, complete and speedy recovery.
Yeah. So yeah, that was pretty scary. It's not the first time it's happened in sports. It's unfortunately probably not going to be the last time. Thank God it's pretty rare.
Yeah, it is. So, if you think about it, it's exceptionally rare.
Yeah.
So, which is great.
Yeah, I think I was mentioning to you, maybe with somebody else earlier, or yesterday, I guess it would have been earlier today. Chris Pronger had something similar. He's an NHL defenseman. He got hit in the chest with a puck, collapsed on the ice. It was terrifying to watch. He ended up back on the ice 12 days later, or something like that. And then he played for 12 years. He was basically back within a couple of weeks, and he played 12 more years. So I'm really hoping that Damar has a similar recovery and lengthy career as Pronger did.
Absolutely.
So, do want to welcome a new sub.
Hey,
we got a new one. We're up to 42 now. We're inching closer to that new hat.
Yeah.
So thank you, Simple Jacks TTV, for joining the crew.
Always nice to welcome a new member of the community.
Yes. And Kevin, if you haven't yet, sub, man. Let's do it. Got to get Drew a new hat.
I bet he's already subbed. So, and Funky says he's here for the beginning. Kids go back to school tomorrow, so he's got dad stuff to do tonight. Well, that's understandable.
Yeah. Well, do you want to do a quick recap on the absolute ass whooping that we gave Chicago?
Sure.
After getting, it was 10-7 at one point, and
yep.
we, 10-7, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then we scored 31 unanswered.
All of the points, yeah.
It was pretty great.
Yeah, I'm if I have to sit down and watch a complete sporting event of anything, I want one team to absolutely crush the other team. So there's no doubt. We don't complain about referee calls. We don't complain about any kind of extraneous other facts. It was just very clear that this team was way better than that team. So this is and the team that I was rooting for was on the better end of it. So I was thrilled. It was fun. It was a fun watch. And now we can move on to week 18 at Green Bay, where everything is on the line.
Yeah. Well, if everything's on the line for Green Bay. We need help. We need the Rams.
We're going to have a difference of opinion on this one. So
if we want to get to the playoffs, we need help. We need to both win and have Los Angeles win. If Green Bay wants to get to the playoffs, all they have to do is beat us. So for those of us that are rooting for the playoffs, that's our path there, is a Seattle loss and a Detroit win. Those rooting for better draft position, I guess are probably rooting for a loss, right?
Well, I'm just saying that if the Lions were to win,
right,
and the Seahawks were to win, I would not shed it. My beard would not catch my tears, because there wouldn't be any. So I think if let's say that scenario plays out.
Yeah.
The Lions would finish the season with a winning record at 9-8. They would miss the playoffs on a technicality, so think of that what you will. But that they currently pick 6th in the draft.
Yeah.
And I don't want to pick any lower than that. So
right. That's fair. That's fair. Because we're long-term approach, right? When you build a team, it's not for tomorrow most of the time. It's a long-term process. When we're at the rebuild stage, when you're at the tweak for championship, that's when you can F them picks,
right, exactly.
and build for today. But that's not where we're at.
Right. So I was listening to, I was reading a Dan Campbell interview.
Mm-hmm.
I think earlier today, and he was talking about, how this is the position you want to be in. Like, yeah, let's go out there and just, it sounds like they're all business. Like they're going out there and they've got their complete focus on going into Green Bay and getting to the playoffs. Cool. Fine with me. Happy to do it. If they make the playoffs, fine. Happy to do it. Happy that they got in. It'll be a good learning experience for everybody. There's a lot of good to take away there. But I would really like to trade out of 6 and be like, someone wants to come up for Will Levis. Like, let's go ahead and pick up a few more draft picks, flesh out the defense, build some depth, and then heading into 2023, okay, playoff push. This is the window. Let's go ahead and do it before all of our rookies that Holmes has drafted enter into their contract extensions. So our time is coming where I will be like, nope, you got to go now. You got to go right now. This is the time. You're in your window. Let's go ahead. Short-term thinking as opposed to long-term thinking. But it's not this season for me quite yet.
Yeah, and even Campbell in his, I think it was his post-game presser, said something to the effect of like, hey, like we're focused on the playoffs. Going forward, we're expecting ourselves to compete for a division title.
Yeah.
That was like starting year 3 was essentially what they were talking about, which is not this year. This year is just extra as far as him and the players are concerned. Like, obviously they want to win, but the expectation was next year was when we really start getting to where we want to get.
Yeah. So I think I would be on board with that. So like my methodology, the way that my train of thinking works, come on, One Pride. Let's not go down that road. My line of thinking is a rebuilding team that's rebuilding linearly and like in baby steps is basically going to be like, well, we're going to get 3 wins from what we had last year. Right. So if you were 4 and whatever, you're looking at a 7-win season. Year 2, you're looking at a 10-win season. Okay, now we're talking playoffs. Now we're talking respectability and all those kinds of things. So like, I would say the Lions are ahead of where I thought they would be at this point. So I'm very happy with where they're going. Like, all of our rookies seem to be contributing. The only one and the only complaint, hey, Crimson.
What's up, Crim?
The only person that's not, because he's hurt, is Chase Lucas, and he was a 7th round corner. So I mean, like, you gotta just kind of, I guess, take I mean, not everybody's gonna, I guess, contribute, but wow. I mean, like, what a great 2-year draft class. Like,
yeah.
So I sit around thinking about it sometimes, just being like, this is amazing how many guys are contributing like in the right way and not just like fluky, crazy, non-repeatable ways. Like, you're just having a good impact on what the team is doing in the scheme, doing what you're being asked to do. It's exceptional. I think that the Lions have selected these guys, and like, I just want one more solid year of that in order to add to this team, because these guys have proven over the last 2 years that they can come in and contribute as rookies, which is abnormal. So looking forward to one more year of that. Yeah. One Pride is referencing Kendrell Bell from TCU. I've been mocking him to the Lions as a 6th round pick to be their 3rd running back. We haven't gotten a running back depth yet, but the way that I'm looking at it right now is that they would re-sign Jamal Williams. You would go into next year with the last year of Swift's rookie contract, and then you would have Kendrell Bell or somebody like him, a Kenny McIntosh from Georgia, or maybe like a Chase Brown from Illinois, as the number 3 running back on this squad next year. And then guys like Corey Reynolds and Justin Jackson would either be practice squad guys, or possibly not on the roster. I mean, I like those guys and they're fine, but I think that they're upgraded.
Craig Reynolds.
Oh
gosh, Corey just doesn't sound right.
I cannot remember that guy's name. Yeah, Kendrell Miller. Kendra? So
one of the things I would mention to Drew, speaking of rookie classes, there was a Facebook post on, I think it's called Heavy on the Giants. It's a Giants Facebook group. And it was all talking about how Thibodeaux was performing better than Hutch.
So
and I'm just
there
like,
was one guy on that thing that was talking.
Well, so the article itself was talking about how Thibodeaux has overtaken Hutch as the best edge rusher of the rookie class. And then I got into the analytics of it. And then there was one completely delusional Giants fan. Hey, you know what? Being a fan, sometimes you just go into the facts don't matter. I'm going to be delusional mode. He was all aboard that ship. And I thought, you know what, because I put some of the analytics into my Facebook post and got some good feedback on it. So that, let's do that for this episode. So I'm gonna do that if you're ready for it. All right,
hit me up.
So this is what we got right now. So what I did is, and I will zoom in so everybody can see. But I ranked the top 3 edge rushers. Number 1 overall, Travon Walker. 2, Hutch, and then Thibodeaux was 5 overall. So what I did is I started grabbing their PFF scores and their main stats. So when we look at some of these things, you kind of have to take into consideration games played: 14 for Walker and Thibodeaux, 16 for Hutch. But they're really close. It's like almost all the season. So I can't imagine, too much difference there. But when you look at the Pro Football Focus rankings, Hutch is the number 1 graded rookie edge rusher. He's 22 overall in the league. Thibodeaux is the 5th best rookie. He's not even the 2nd best rookie for as far as Pro Football Focus's grading is concerned. He's the 40th best overall and 5th as a rookie.
Michael?
Yes.
When are we planning to zoom in? Right now? Excellent.
Right now. Let's
Please
zoom
continue.
in better.
Please continue.
Right. So Hutch is the best. Thibodeaux's the 5th best. Walker's only the 10th best. And he's 89th overall as in the league. And when we look at the actual overall, the PFF scores, we've got Hutch is almost at an 80, which is elite when you start getting into the 80 and above. 70.9.9 is as close as you're going to get to 80 without getting there.
Right.
Thibodeaux's overall is 71.9. That's a pretty good, still good. Like, I'm not taking anything away from Thibodeaux as far as like, is he playing well? Yes. But the Heavy on the Giants post in the article they were referring to talked about how he was better. And I'm just like, that's not what anything bears out. I've got Walker's stuff up there just because he did go 1st overall, and it's interesting to see how our guy compares to the number 1 overall. But as you can see, he's a 58 overall, 59 run, 57. Like, these are not elite numbers. So really, I'm only focusing on the Hutch versus Thibodeaux. Hutch was significantly better on the overall score. They were relatively close on the run defense with Thibodeaux getting the nod there. They were basically just as close on the pass rush with Hutch getting the nod there. Hutch has significantly higher coverage grade. And when you look at like on the number of games that they played and where they graded, Hutch had 2 games graded in the 90s, including this past week. Thibodeaux had 0. Hutch had 3 of them in the 80s. Thibodeaux had 2. Hutch had 1 in the 70s to Thibodeaux's 3, and Hutch had 5 in the 60s to Thibodeaux's 2. And even though Hutch played 2 more games overall, he has 2 fewer under 60 grades. That's, to me, there's no way someone can argue that Thibodeaux has been playing as well as Hutch, and PFF kind of shows some of that. When we look at the actual stats around it, he's got 50 pressures to Thibodeaux's 40, 32 defensive stops to his 22. Hutch beats him in hurries, 36 to 25. whomping him in sacks, 7. In fact, James Houston has more sacks in 6 games played than Thibodeaux has in 14. Double, actually. They both had the same number of quarterback hits. Thibodeaux technically has one more combined. It's supposed to be a B. I'm going to fix that because my OCD is going to kill me. They're essentially the same in tackles, with Thibodeaux 1 over. Although Hutch has 1 more tackle for loss. He's got 3 interceptions and 2 fumble recoveries for 5 total turnovers. Thibodeaux has 2 forced fumbles, and he recovered both of those. So he's got 2 turnovers to Hutch's 5. And the color coding on this side over here is blue is if you're in first in this group, green is second, orange is in third. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I was talking about in this post was, all right, and just to like be even with him, not to like surpass him, in the last game, Thibodeaux would need 2 games in the 90s, which you can't do. 1 in the 80s, which you could do. He's already got more, or he'd need 3 more 60s games and 2 less under 60s. So like, there's no way he can catch up on grading. If he wants to have even the same stats as Hutch will have to essentially have 0 meaningful stats. And then Thibodeaux would still need 10 pressures, 10 defensive stops, 10 hurries, 3.5 sacks, a tackle for loss, 3 interceptions, and a fumble recovery just to match the baseline. It's not even close. There's a reason why Aidan Hutchinson and Sauce Gardner are the 2 guys that are mostly talked about for Defensive Rookie of the Year, and Thibodeaux's just not in the conversation. He's great. He's going to be a very good player, but let's not pretend that he's there yet. Mm-hmm. So, and then I don't know if we want to take a look at the last game. It was kind of similar when we look at it. Hutch, this last game, because he's coming on stronger lately. I'm like, okay, let's take a look at the last game. Hutch outgrades him 90 to 77.8. Hutch had 7 pressures to Thibodeaux's 1. They were about the same in stops with Thibodeaux 3 to 2. They were about the same in sacks with a 0.5 to 1, about the same in tackles, but Hutch had an interception and a fumble recovery. I mean, he had a monster game. And I mean, these are good numbers for any rookie, but they're just not Hutch's numbers, right? When it comes to what they did just last game.
Blue means first, One Pride.
Blue means first, yes.
He ranks first in the categories that Mike has put up on the screen. Yeah.
Of the 3 guys, first, second, third. So blue is first, green is second, and orange is third.
Yeah.
So I just thought that was interesting. I'm curious and I haven't been looking at the comments because I've been staring at my spreadsheet, but I'm curious if this is something that we want to see in other episodes. Do we want to do these kind of like compares, maybe with Rodrigo or maybe Kirby Joseph? Do we want to do that with, say, Goff or JMO? Like, let us know, because I'm really kind of curious if this is the kind of stuff you guys dig, as well as some of the other roster construction stuff. So yeah, that's my head on these guys. Anything
I'd be interested to see a Rodrigo one, because the debate about
hey Shan,
the debate about when to take a linebacker is one with a lot of like, there's a wide spectrum of opinion on when that. Red is PFF's like below par coloring. So on these scores, this is mirroring these grades from PFF. That's mirroring their grading scale.
Yeah.
So like a red is below average, orange and yellow are mediocre, green, blue, those are really good grades.
Yeah, the darker green you get, and then the blue are the very good to elite.
So we got at least one vote. Let's see. Oh, you should have put Karlaftis in too. So I think we should put Karlaftis in there. We can always do an update to this. I think Mike went with just these 3 because they were all drafted right around the same pick. But Karlaftis is having a wonderful season in Kansas City, and maybe we should throw him in there at some point.
I like that idea. I can do that.
Yep. And then as far as Rodrigo is concerned, I would very much like to look at that one, because when you look at somebody like Devin Lloyd, who the Jaguars traded up from pick number 33 to draft in the first round, like he came out of the gate gangbusters. But it got to the point in the season where he was largely not benched, but like he was playing about a third of the snaps that he would otherwise play.
Yeah.
And that hasn't happened with Rodriguez. The only time that Rodriguez has not played this season was because he hurt his elbow. So I would very much like to see Rodriguez compared to the other first 3 linebackers drafted in last year's class. Just because I think it would illustrate it's not about it can't there's so many different ways to look at it, but like I think what Brad Holmes does well is that he is good at identifying important traits in players that are going to translate to productivity on the field. What is happening? Okay. So like if you look at guys like Kirby Joseph, right? They took Kirby at 97 because he was kind of this ball hawking free range safety with only a year worth of experience under his belt at Illinois. And when Tracy Walker went down, he got kind of pressed into service, but he did so really well. And like he has played like a ball hawking roving safety, right? Like he's going to make some great plays and he's going to give up some great plays too. But like he is also still a rookie. So we're hoping to minimize his negatives moving forward through development. But like we have James Houston, who's just absolutely balling as a pass rusher right now out of nowhere, a 6th round pick. And, and then somebody like, let's see, Rodrigo, Houston, and Kirby, right? So like, I think they're identifying traits extremely well. And if you can identify traits that translate in players who are going to be taken later, then there's no reason to draft a player per se.
Yeah.
With a higher pick in order to like guarantee that you're going to get some of those traits.
Yeah. And one of the things that I had noticed as I was kind of doing some research to find the stats, I did run across this Pride of Detroit column about should Aidan Hutchinson win Defensive Rookie of the Year. And they do a pretty good job. They talk about Gardner. He's done enough to show that he could be the next league's next shutdown corner. He's got an 88 overall PFF grade, which is the highest of any NFL cornerback with at least 200 snaps. Like that's awesome to be that graded, that highly graded. One of the things they talked about with Gardner, though, is that his downside is he plays for a team that's fallen off after having playoff aspirations earlier in the year. And he hasn't really filled up the stat sheet, partially because they're not throwing toward him.
That is the best stat for a cornerback.
Yeah, but it's not sexy. So like, and they even mentioned like, hey, if the people that are voting are stat based and they're like, oh, he only has 2 picks, no sacks, no forced fumbles, But if they're the analytic type and they're looking at that 88 PFF grade and the fact that the quarterback's passer rating or completion percentage toward him is so low, those are things that they're going to value. And then if they're just looking at stats, they may go, I don't know, look at Hutch's stats, like he's better. So it'll be interesting. He'll get some votes. Both. I think it's probably leaning toward Gardner, but I think I would not be surprised if Hutch gets it.
I love Aidan Hutchinson. He went to Michigan. I'm a Michigan fan. I love him, but I would vote for Ahmad Gardner.
Yeah.
Ahmad Gardner.
Well, 88's, there's a reason he's 88.
He's not just a good corner right off the bat. He is a good corner as a rookie who's like teams are not targeting him. There is no sign of respect greater possibly in football than when you simply don't throw on that side of the field.
Yeah.
Like his impact can't be quantified because it can't accumulate stats, but just like he is a fog bank on one half of the field.
Yeah.
Like he allows that team to basically be like up when it comes to the amount of territory that they have to cover on defense. And the Jets defense has been great for the majority of the season. It's their offense that's the problem.
Yeah.
So like, I know that he doesn't have like a sexy narrative or what have you, but like, to me, if you're at this particular position, not having stats is the best stat that he can have.
Yeah. Oh, I totally agree, and I would also vote for Gardner, but I wouldn't be surprised if Hutch either wins it or is like it's a lot tighter race than it probably should be.
Sure.
And a lot of that is because the last several games the Jets have fallen off, and Tariq Woolen is kind of that third guy, and they've also fallen off over in Seattle. Whereas we've picked up, like we've gotten better, and since week 11, Hutch is the third highest graded of all edge defender, not just rookie, all edge defenders. Just getting better. He's only behind Myles Garrett and Josh. Uche. I was like, I have no idea how to pronounce.
You want to know how I know how to pronounce his last name?
How's that?
He went to Michigan. So
right. So like that's another reason why I think Hutch might end up getting more votes, because he is just starting to play better, and our defense and our team is doing better down the stretch as opposed to the team falling off.
Sure. I mean, that does matter when it comes to these end of the season's awards, is how well is your team doing?
Yeah. If you already voted, then you probably voted Gardner because they were killing it. If you haven't voted yet and you're waiting to the end of the season, you want to see how it goes, you're probably more likely to vote somebody else just because the team's not doing as well. Gardner he doesn't have the opportunity to get those stats, and Hutch is killing it. So
there were a couple things I wanted to mention about Hutchinson from this last game that I don't know are going to show up on any stat sheet or what have you. But
yeah,
if you go back and you watch the Kaminsky sack and the first of Pascal's 2 sacks, what you'll see is that Aidan took the right tackle on both of those plays and bull rushed him right into Justin Fields' lap.
Yeah.
And when Fields, adjusts to try and get away from having like a 300-pound dude pushed right into him, there's Pascal, there's Kaminsky right there to clean up. So like, it's not going to go down that Aidan Hutchinson had any impact on that play.
Yeah.
But he did. Like, he's the reason that he caught those other 2 guys got those sacks. Like, not that they can't do it without him, but like, this is the kind of impact that he has.
Yeah.
And you only get that. You're not going to understand it by looking at a stat sheet. You're going to have to do it by watching the game. And there was a play right off the bat, I think maybe in the second quarter, where Fields had broken containment. He was still looking to pass. He wasn't trying to run. And Aidan is just standing in front of him, basically like in a basketball stance, like playing defense, basically just trying to keep Fields in front of him.
Yeah.
And he manages to do it. And then by the time that Fields throws the ball, he has to just throw an incomplete pass.
Yep.
Like, Aidan Hutchinson accumulates stats as well as any rookie defensive lineman out of last year's class, but his overall impact on how well our defensive is playing can't be quantifiably measured. Like, the best measurement that we have would be PFF grading, just to see, like, quote unquote, how well he's doing. But yeah, I think that this or especially during this turnaround where they're 7 out of their last 9 is largely, like you mentioned it with that stat, like he's just playing at a level that you wouldn't expect from a rookie. And I really want to talk about James Houston.
Yeah, I didn't even grab him in my stats because he'd only played 6 games, and we were really talking edge rushers, not those off-ball, linebacker, Von Miller types, right?
Right.
Von Miller was the last guy to do what Houston's done, and back in like 2011.
Yeah, so he has 109 snaps at the defensive end position so far, right? And like, this is 7 games he's been playing. So he's kind of in a similar position that Amon-Ra St. Brown was in last year.
Yeah.
Like, they were still figuring out their wide receiver rotation. And then that Pittsburgh game where they tied was when we really see St. Brown start to produce at the level that he's been able to maintain this entire season. And now you see that with James Houston. They drafted him, they cut him, they brought him back. And then he got a chance, right? Charles Houston's been hurt. Romeo Okwara recently came back, and then guys like Austin Bryant, Julian Okwara just aren't making the impact that we had hoped that they might make. But he has 7.5, and he's being asked to do nothing but rush the passer. He is in there to do one thing, and that is be a missile to try and go after opposing quarterbacks. Fine with me. Whatever. If he's going to do it at this clip, he can continue to do it. But like last week, we talked about edge rushers in our position deep dives. And I'm getting to the point now where, like, heading into the draft, I don't know that we should really consider edge rusher as like a consideration in the first round, because this kid might be it.
Yeah.
And so
look at his grades.
I know it's ridiculous. And so let's look at his run defense grades. They're terrible.
Yeah.
But he has also not played the whole season. He's been on the practice squad most of the time. So if you go through,
he's playing third downs where you're not run containing, you are just going balls to the wall at the quarterback, right? That's just
right. So my thing, but his pass rush grades are elite, and especially the last two games.
Yeah, 85.1 and 91.6 the last two games on his pass rush grades.
So to me, so PFF is crediting him with an extra half sack than from what ESPN or Next Gen Sports, which is ESPN's analytics department. I think, so this is right around what he's contributed. So like, between Hutch and James Houston, we can talk about like how Hutchinson, like maybe like a Bosa or a Myles Garrett had like 12 plus sacks or whatever in their rookie seasons. But like between these two guys, the rookies that Brad Holmes has brought in have contributed something like 15, 16, 17 sacks. I don't care that it's one guy.
It was absurd.
Yeah. I don't care if it's one guy. If you are going to have a pass rusher produce 7.5 or 8 sacks out of 100 snaps, I don't know how you can go into next year with Charles Harris on this team when you could say we have to find a way to get James Houston 100 and 150 more snaps. If his win rate, if his pass rush acumen is going to remain the same over a larger sample size, he's a 10 sack guy, easy.
Yeah. Well, and for anybody that's like listening and not watching to the stream or listening to it later, James Houston's, he's only played in 6 games, right? But those games were overall defensive ranking of 78.9, 86.3 in his first 2, 68.2 and 65.3 in his next 2, which is still kind of like starter-ish, like decent. And then 87 and 85.1 in his last 2. He's averaging an 89.5 overall defensive grade. And his overall pass rush is an 89.2. Like, these are elite. Yeah.
To me,
where was he the first 11 weeks? Come on. Yeah. Where Campbell?
To me, what this reads is if you go through those teams that he's played against, you might as well rank it like his highest scores going from like worst tackles to best. He abused Chicago's tackles. He abused Carolina's tackles, who are rookies. Or their left tackle is a rookie. Jets have a pretty solid tackle group. Minnesota has a pretty solid tackle group. Jacksonville has terrible tackles. Buffalo, good tackles, not great. So I think that he is really taking advantage of the player across from him. That's what this is telling me.
Yeah.
And
I agree.
I think that, he makes $900,000 next year. Why wouldn't you cut Charles Harris, save $4 million, and give this kid another 150 snaps?
Yeah, all of his snaps go to Houston, right?
I just don't get it. Like, the Lions are going to need to turn over contracts at some point. this kid is balled out. Like, let's give him. I mean, you might as well give him one more chance, and then you can at least go into the draft this year and say, I think edge is probably good. So like you could probably keep a Romeo Okwara next season, and then like there's going to be a rotation. Well, Bakhtiari's hurt all the time. He's got 2 years, Drew. James Houston or Charles Harris? Who are we talking about, One Bread? Because you might as well figure out a way to develop this guy a little bit, because there's no reason to not to. Like, he's your cheapest option and your best option. Great. Seems awesome. Yeah. I mean, Kaminsky's fantastic. I love Kaminsky too. Like Houston, he has. Now let's look it up. 1 second. I got it.
I'm bringing it up right now.
You son of a bitch.
No. If I can get my. I have no idea what just happened.
So we are paying him $235,000 this year, and we're paying him $945,000 in 2023. And then he's an unrestricted free agent or an exclusive rights free agent. But I mean, that's what it is. I mean, they did cut him during the season and then brought him back to re-signed him to the practice squad. So I don't think that he's just on his rookie deal. He's on some other. Oh, we're going to talk about the DT core in just a few minutes. Crimson, don't miss that.
That is a perfect segue. Do we want to move into that?
Sure. He's on the very bottom of the list, Mike. He's like the 51st player. Oh, you're in 2023? You don't need to be in 2023.
Yeah, 2024.
No. Like, go to 2022 and then go down to the bottom of the roster. And then there's James Houston.
Hey, we're paying him $235.
Nothing. We're paying him nothing. That's like a quarter of the veteran minimum.
Yeah.
And if you click on his name, it'll show you next year. Well, you know that.
Yeah. Next year he'll be making 9.5.
Right.
Not,
so
9,
I mean, like,
950.
That's nothing. I mean, we're paying Amon-Ra St. Brown about exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Well, let's switch gears a little bit. I love the content there and the chat kind of talking about some of those analytics. But let's start talking position groups. This week we're going to go over both defensive tackles and our linebacker to kind of finish up our defense.
Yeah. So I'm going to bring up my Excel sheet that I work off of here just real quickly. Go away. Stop it.
All right. While you're doing that, we're gonna do some fun things here while you're bringing up your stuff. Next Gen Stats has some really cool top plays, and I thought I would bring up some of the Lions based ones. So there's something called remarkable rushes, which typically is sorted by the rush yards over expected. Jamal Williams had a 58-yard rush. That play had an expected rush of 8 yards, and he ended up with 50 over, which was awesome. Swift was the 10th largest last week. He had a 35-yard rush with only a 9-yard expected, so he was plus 26. And then Jamison Williams end around ended up with 40 yards, so 16 yards over expected. 3 of the top 20 rushing plays were Lions. That's pretty cool. Fastest ball carriers, Jamison Williams went 20.27 miles an hour. He was the 8th fastest last week. What else we have here? Longest plays, Jamal Williams. And these are like, how long did you run from the start of the play to the end of the play? So like Jamison Williams ran 71.5 yards, but it was that 40-yard end around because he had to go from one end of the field all the way around and then whatever zigzagging. Jamal Williams 58-yard rush, he ran 71. So we had 2 of the longest rushes. Fastest sacks, James Houston, bam, nailing it, 3.58 seconds. He was the 13th fastest sack last week. Longest tackles, Kirby Joseph. The cool thing, I like this one. He covered almost 60 yards to make that tackle. That is someone who doesn't give up on a play. I love that. That's pretty cool. So he was the 4th longest tackle. And then the last one, incredible yards after the catch. Swift, the expected yak for him was 7, and he ended up with 17. I'm sorry. He ended up with 15 extra, so he was 22-yard catch. So he was the 12th over the expected yards after the catch. So I thought that was pretty cool. But you got your stuff up now, so I think we will move into that.
All right, I'll make it bigger. 1 second. All right, that's probably big enough.
All right.
Okay, so once again, this is kind of just like the 2023 roster breakdown that I've been using to go through and make some predictions about the draft, free agency, and what the roster is going to look like next year. So we're going to do a deep dive on defensive tackles today. So in the 2023 season, this is what the guys under contract that we have under contract already. We have McNeil and Onwuzurike. McNeil's clearly a starter. We're only paying him $1.3 million next year. Onwuzurike, we don't know. His injury status is still TBD. Hopefully he's able to come back and contribute. That would be great. And then, of course, Crimson in the chat is like, what about Bugs? Should we keep Bugs? Well, let's talk about it. So as of a couple weeks ago, I had done a breakdown of snap counts at positions for this position group. And so the 2 guys leading the way at defensive tackle are Aleem McNeil. He had almost 600 snaps at that point. It's more now. And Isaiah Bugs. He was right behind him with 563. The third guy in position was John Kaminsky. So Bugs and Kaminsky, both of their contracts are up this year. They are going to be unrestricted free agents. So I have them highlighted in yellow as targets for the Detroit Lions as far as re-signing is concerned, at the very least, as depth pieces. They both, I think, contributed very well to the Lions' interior defense. It is an area of need, but if these guys are not starters, and these are your rotational pieces, they are effectively starters as far as their snap counts are concerned, then I think that you're really talking about a quality group. So this is the question right here. Who's going to be the defensive tackle next to Aleem McNeil in this front 4 next season? So my hope is, of course, Jalen Carter. That's probably not going to happen. So realistically right now, the name that I have right here for the Lions is all right, I can't type. All right, maybe it's gonna let me do it. Is never mind. Is Brian Breesy, the defensive tackle from Clemson. He's more of a penetrative defensive tackle. He's not so much as a run stopper. That's McNeil's kind of bread and butter. But I do think that having someone like that who is going to be able to collapse the pocket, flush quarterbacks out of it, so to speak, into a Hutchinson, a Houston, a Pascal, a John Kaminsky, somebody like that would be very valuable to have along that defensive front. And it's one more guy in a lineup that we don't currently have. So maybe you don't want Aidan Hutchinson to have 1,000 snap season. If you can get that down to 850, and he's just a little bit fresher later in the season, so be it. So to me, maybe they don't go that route, right? Maybe they decide to go out into free agency and test those waters. You're going to have to spend some of that money at some point. So I got a couple options here that I think might be realistic for a guy to play next to Aleem McNeil. So the 2 guys that I have are Poona Ford, who is a defensive tackle for the Seahawks, who's up for free agency, and Sheldon Rankins. I think both of those guys on a free agent contract would be less than $10 million a year APY. So that's kind of my options for like a cheap player would be $10 million a year or less, and an expensive player would be more than $10 million a year. But if you're looking at somebody like an expensive investment, someone like a Javon Hargrave, whose contract is up in Philadelphia, a Deron Payne from Washington, would be kind of I think the ideal guys to fit in right there. However, having said this, you're going to have to outbid the Bears for those players. So it's going to be tough. Well, you can go Payne or Hargrave. I just think that they're going to be way more expensive than some other options. And like I don't think that the Lions need to get much better at defensive tackle, but if you want to go a cheap option, I would rather go through the draft, because those contracts are, guaranteed 4 to 5 years, and you're going to pay them less than you would somebody on the free agent market. So did we lose I'm not sharing my screen anymore.
Yeah, it went away. I think when you tried to, did you close the tab or something?
Nope. How long has it been gone?
Minute or two, when you tried to look at the Breesy thing.
Oh, okay. Next time, let me know.
I thought you knew. No. I thought you just did it.
So here's what I think the Lions would do. I think you go into the draft and you look at adding a defensive tackle in the first round. I think somebody like, it would be awesome if Jalen Carter would be the shining star in the sky, right? He's the perfect fit for the Lions in particular in this draft. Like, there's no better fit of talent and position in this class than Jalen Carter. They have a need at the position. He's elite. Perfect marriage. So that would be great. I don't know that Brian Breesy is that far behind Jalen Carter. I mean, he's clearly not as good of a player, but would he fit well for the Detroit Lions? Absolutely. So right now they're sitting at 6 overall. I could see them taking Brian Breesy and then a cornerback at right now I think they're sitting at 17 or 16. So somebody like Christian Gonzalez, Keely Ringo, Joey Porter, Brian Branch, Devin Witherspoon, somebody like that would all be great picks there. And you walk out of the first round next draft with a defensive tackle and a cornerback. I think I'm really liking the look of the team. And if you decide to go out into free agency and sign Javon Hargrave, and you're like, well, now we can just take whomever we think, or we can trade out of 6 or what have you. Great. And there's even some guys like in the later rounds, like Tuli Pelotu from USC would be a nice addition. Jackson Player from Baylor would be a nice like mid-round pick for depth purposes at the position. Then I think you go into camp if you go that route, and you have like a open competition to see who's the starter across from Lee McNeil. Okay, but like I think that this position group is just about ready to be solidified for the next couple years, because I do think they are going to I do think they're going to re-sign Bugs. I do think they're going to re-sign Kaminsky, and they're probably heading into the draft with that being one of their top priorities. And Pascal's large enough; he can do some defensive tackle work in like certain alignments. So there's a lot of flexibility there.
Did you remember to answer? Funky had a good question. They said, wait, didn't they cut Houston so he's no longer on his rookie contract? So how much is it going to cost to keep him? So on Over the Cap, it does show all of his contract history.
Sure. So
you can see like his initial rookie contract was 4 years, $3.7 million with only $132K guaranteed. He was cut, right? He didn't make our roster. He was elevated to the practice squad. That was a $200,000 contract. And then it was kind of renegotiated or whatever. And then when we finally signed him to our active status, to our actual big club, they signed him to a 2-year contract for a total $1.6 million, around $825K a year. This year it's $235,000. So next year, when we flip over to just the regular contract, next year he's going to be making $945. So to answer his question, yes, we're no longer on that rookie contract, that kind of base contract that all the draftees get, but we are on a 2-year contract with him.
Yeah.
So that's all. He had a good question, and I always wondered, like, so when we do elevate people or cut people, how does that affect those things? So I figured it was worth going over.
Yeah, I mean,
Carry on.
they elevated a bunch of practice squad guys. In fact, they had to restructure 2 contracts. I believe it was Decker and Brockers in order to have enough cap room to continue making those moves. Because you sign a guy off the practice squad, that's some amount of your cap, and then next week you cut him, and then you re-sign him to the practice squad, and then that's the slow accumulation of that process eats away at your cap. So like when I'm talking about like the cap is important, we need to talk about the cap. We need to have. Oh yeah, Brockers is the number 1 cut after the season. Like he's just been not even active for games. Like he's a captain, but like you're going to save $10 million by cutting him. So there's no chance. So that he's on the roster. But like, they're just trying to keep their head above water with their cap situation this year. Like you can go into next year and you might have $10 or $15 million once you're done signing free agents in your draft class to play around with. Like, and then now you're able to actually make some moves.
Yeah. And to your point, like CJ Moore has 2 under dead money. He has 2 contracts, one for $550,000 and one for $266, because of the whole bring him up, send him back, bring him up, send him back. That you accumulate dead cap money that way, which is why you need extra money of cap space throughout the year so you can make these changes, because otherwise it's still going to count against your cap.
Yeah, the cap is a living, breathing, week to week thing. Like it's not just applicable at certain times of the year.
Yeah.
So are we signing or drafting a linebacker for the green dot? Well, if it's up to me, I'm signing one. I don't know if it's a green dot guy. I don't even know why. I mean, like I think didn't Tracy Walker have it when he was healthy? I mean, the green dot is the communicator and like general of the defense, right?
Right.
So I have a couple thoughts on that. So let's move to linebackers. So I'm going to share my screen again, Michael.
All right.
Let's see if he lets me do it this time or he kicks me out. So here we have linebackers in 2023. The 2 linebackers that we have under contract are Derek Barnes and Malcolm Rodriguez. Effectively, Brad Holmes draft picks are the guys that we have on the roster that are under contract. So are those going to be the starters? I doubt it. I know Rodriguez is going to be one of them unless something weird happens. But Derek Barnes, I think, has shown that he's going to be a nice rotational special team / backup guy. But I don't think that he's in position to challenge for a starter spot unless there is an injury present. But you have guys like Anthony Pittman, Josh Woods, Chris Board, who are all quote unquote linebackers, but are really core special teams players. And Detroit, per PFF, has the number 1 special teams group in the NFL right now. And I don't see why there's any reason to screw with that. So to me, it's smart to bring back Board and Pittman at the very least, and probably Josh Woods as well, and put them into the linebacker room, which means you need at least 1 player to join them, probably the starter. Alex Anzalone's contract's up. I know he's played well the last several weeks, but like to me, he's just a guy that you can upgrade over. And you take a chance at that because it's going to be cheap to do. Like we know that you can go out into the free agent market and sign a linebacker, and there's always linebackers available in the draft vis-a-vis Malcolm Rodriguez. So what are we going to do? Alex Anzalone would be someone that was difficult to replace. As of a couple weeks ago, he had a ton of snaps. Remember, Malcolm Rodriguez was hurt and missed, 2 or 3 games? So Anzalone's snap count is extremely high because he had to cover a lot of those snaps. And then number 3 on our list is Derek Barnes. And the rest of the guys, Chris Board had played 88 snaps at that point. Jared Davis had made his way onto the field. But basically those 3 guys are the guys that are playing starting linebacker position for the Lions this season. So what can they do? Right? So we know that free agency is going to happen before the draft. So what are we looking at? Well, if you want a cheap option, there's a couple things I think you can do. I don't think Devin Bush is going to be re-signed by the Pittsburgh Steelers. He went to Michigan. He's lived in Michigan. You could bring him back to the state of Michigan, and you could plug him into a role next to Malcolm Rodriguez. And then you could see how that goes, and that wouldn't cost you very much money. Same thing for Josh Bynes. There's been kind of a connection between the Lions and the Ravens when it comes to them signing players, Deshaun Elliott, Chris Board. So there's been kind of, I wouldn't call it a pipeline necessarily, but it exists. And so would somebody like a Josh Bynes have an opportunity to come to Detroit and possibly challenge for a starting spot on another prove it deal? Or you could go completely the other way, and you could go into free agency and you could look to spend your money at this position. This is absolutely, I would not do this. But you could look at a player like a Levante David or a Tremaine Edmonds, which would probably run you close to $10 million a piece at those positions, and then that would be your starter. Now, Levante David is still playing really well, but he might get cut from Tampa Bay just because they're going to be $42 million over the cap next season, and they're gonna have to cut somebody. And if you're looking to re-sign Devin White to a second contract at some point here before his rookie deal's up, you might let go of Levante David. And if that's the case, I think it probably wouldn't be a bad idea for the Lions to call and see if he wants to come on a 1 or a 2-year contract and just be like, yeah, we'll pay you close to 10, and I think that would immediately upgrade the linebacking group. But this is the thing that One Pride wants to hear about. He wants to hear about would you draft a linebacker in the first round? My answer is no. It's just a position I don't think is something that you would burn a first round pick on. If you look at guys like Devin Lloyd, he's a good linebacker, but the Jaguars traded up from 33 into the late 20s to take him. And he's been fine, but he hasn't been better than Malcolm Rodriguez. So there's a couple of options I think that you could look to draft early, first rounds 1 or 2. And that I think the best linebacker in this draft class is Trenton Simpson from Clemson. He is a hybrid linebacker / slot corner, basically. So he's a little undersized, but he's fast and he does pretty much everything well. He can rush, he can cover, he's got speed, which I think is something that with a guy like Justin Fields in the division now, you absolutely have to have. You cannot afford to have guys who cannot keep up with a Justin Fields. Otherwise, he's going to destroy you once that team starts spending money in draft picks to support him. The reason that we crushed the Bears this last game is that they've just been worn down by injuries, and they're just waiting for the season to end so they can get to the best part of the season, which is going to be making their team better for Justin Fields. So you need to do the same. But I'm not going to spend a first round pick on Trenton Simpson. He's a great player. I'd love to have him as a Lion, but if he's there in round 2, yeah, absolutely, but not in the first. There's a guy from Arkansas named Drew Sanders. He was an Alabama product. He transferred to Arkansas. He's a fantastic player. He's got size, speed. He's an excellent tackler, super smart. I would look at him in round 2 if he's there with the Lions' second round pick. And then if you wanted to draft a guy in the mid to late rounds, I think you're looking at somebody like Jalen Graham from Purdue or a Dan Henley from Washington State. I think those are super athletic, rangy linebackers that you can put next to Rodriguez. That's going to be able to do things like get to Justin Fields to have a chance to tackle him, right? Justin Fields is just huge. So it's going to be really, really tough. But you need guys that are going to be able to physically get there, and these guys can all do that. So we got some questions here. Yeah, realistic cheap replacement for Anzalone is actually Alex Anzalone. If he is back, I just don't think that this. I think that Alex Anzalone is playing as well as he possibly can, and I just don't think that that's good enough to make the team better. No hate or anything for Anzalone. I think he's your average replacement level linebacker in the NFL, and I want the team to get better, and I think that means moving on from Alex Anzalone.
If we can't find better, though, he's a fine status quo guy, right?
Yeah, he already knows the system. He's played with the players. There's chemistry or what have you, like intangibles. So, if it's just like we go into free agency and there's nothing, and you don't want to burn a pick on a linebacker in the draft, yeah, bring back Anzalone. But that is just like, that might as well be waving a white flag. No, not Noah Sewell. Stop. No, I don't have any problem with Noah Sewell as a player. But to me, the Noah Sewell love is his last name, and the fact that he played at Oregon, where his brother, Penei Sewell, who was also a Detroit Lion, see the connection, went. And to me, that's not good enough. And he is a throwback linebacker, which I do not think that the Lions can afford to take. If you aren't, I think the Lions have shown that they have a dedication to speed. They signed DJ Chark, they drafted Jamison Williams. Even James Houston is that explosive speed kind of player. And to me, the Lions should be moving towards more of that. Let's get faster. Let's be the team in the NFC. When everyone else in the NFC North is zigging, zag. Right. So if everybody else in the NFC North wants to be big, let's be fast. And unfortunately, Noah Sewell is not that, and to be honest, he hasn't even played that well this year at Oregon. And I don't know that he's going to be a first round pick. I like DeMarvion Overshown from Texas too. One Pride. I think that he's a guy with good range. He does all the stuff that I talk about. If he's there in the third round, yeah, I think they have the 75th pick. That would be fantastic. But I would trust Brad to go in the draft and get a guy as opposed to a free agent. So Brad knows. Yep. He's leading the way there. And so, yeah, just not a fan of Anzalone. Seems like a dude you can upgrade over.
Yeah, if we want to stay the same, we keep him. If we want to get better, we upgrade, right?
Rodriguez is a starting caliber linebacker in the NFL. He's not replacement level. He's much better than a replacement level linebacker. So,
and he's a rookie, which means he should, in general, get better as he gets experience.
Right. And the only other argument for going with a rookie and developing these guys is that, it's a 4-year contract, and you're going to pay them, by the time you're going to draft a linebacker in rounds 2 or later, you're paying them $1 million a year, and if you signed a linebacker in free agents, if you re-signed Alex Anzalone for $5 million or drafted DeMarvion Overshown in round 3, Alex Anzalone is not 5 times better than that rookie. So it just makes fiscal sense, I think, to draft a guy, just not early, at this position. So,
yeah. Right on. Well, I think we will call it for today. Next week, I think we're doing a recap of. I'll try to get those updated with. Who was it? Help me out, Drew. Who was I going to add to my spreadsheet?
You were going to add George Karlaftis to the edge rusher group.
Yep.
And we were going to do Malcolm Rodriguez versus the first 3 linebackers drafted last year.
Yep. So we'll do that as the kind of the rookie watch section. We will do a recap on our deep dive on the whole defense and do a. Hey, Brian, welcome. I don't know if I saw you earlier. I wasn't catching up in the chat, but if you were here earlier, awesome. So we'll do probably a mock after kind of a recapping our defense and doing the stat update. Tuesdays, 7:00. As always, like, comment, subscribe to the YouTube channel. That helps us out. And it'll get that stupid Ravens hat off of Drew's head.
Hang on now. Close. I'm happy to wear a Detroit Lions hat, but there will be no besmirching of the Ravens.
We'll get that darned Ravens hat off of his head.
That's a little better.
All right. Any email us at casualgmpodcast@gmail.com or add us or tweet us at casualgmpodcast on Twitter. That's all I got. Anything else, Drew, that you think of?
Nope. Just hoping. I'm just excited to see what Week 18 brings, and then we can finally get into the NFL season. After it, so.
Into the after season, the draft, and
that's my home. That's where I live. That's the exciting thing for me. So I can't wait.
Right on. All right. Thanks for everybody that joins us, and we'll see you in just under 7 days from now. But about an hour and 6 minutes.
It's 6 days, 23 hours. Yeah, we'll do it.
Yes,
you got the math.
All right. We'll see you guys.